with at a footy group.
No, it's not. I think, and gladly that never happened again. And let's hope it does. And I know it's in the media for all the right reasons. I never sort of felt it happen. It was only when the players walked out of the rooms I saw the leading news story, and I thought, wow. And then you hear your sister in tears. The next day, one of the media got hold of her, and and all of a sudden I thought, gee, the Frawley name started somehow getting mixed up in, the whole scenario, the whole of Bungaree was sort of behind me. And the next, that was tough. That was a tough week. I think the Footy Show wanted to get me on. I said it was because I was pretty emotional, very emotional actually. And Anita, I got my beautiful wife Anita to go on the Footy Show on the Thursday night. So from that was tough. But then again, didn't play in a flag or coach a flag, but we played. I don't know whether it was good management, but I thought, oh no, because I really didn't spend too much time when we were playing onto the players because I need to simplify it for them. We're playing on another bloody Friday night. Hawthorn.
Beautifully set up.
And Peter Everett had a shot to ice the game, I think just near the siren, and wow, we won the game. And I remember my late father and mum and all my family and a couple of busloads from Bungaree come down. They come into the rooms before the game, and I must admit, subconsciously, I thought, no, that's it, I'm done. Yeah, I never told anyone, and we won that game, and I thought, and for whatever reason, we didn't win too many more after that. Probably none, really. But that was the night mentally I thought, no, that's it. It's taken too much out of me. My three girls, mum and dad, and it wasn't woe is me. It was just the fact that particular week got bigger than football for some reason, which was disappointing, coming from a little town where everyone bands together. And as I said, most Richmond supporters were outstanding, but that was one that cut to the quick a bit. Because the win-loss, I think it was leading into the bye, we were 4 wins, 9 losses, I reckon, leading into the bye. So mathematically, there's another 9 games to go. That sounds right, yep. So mathematically was still a chance, but I thought, we're no chance. So I had a lunch with Greg Miller, Ricky Nixon, who was my manager, and Clinton on the Saturday of the bye. And I said, guys, come on, let's get on the front foot here. What's the go? And the easiest thing for me would have been just to put my hand up and say, it's all over. And because the sacking was a week away or whatever it was. But I'd always thought I could read the play pretty well. So we agreed, whether it was right or wrong, that I was going to resign the Monday before the players come back when we played Brisbane in Brisbane. And they asked me, do I want to coach? And I said, yeah, I'm a country boy. It never dawned on me not to walk away. It was funny, when I became a coach's CEO, and I had a lot of coaches go through that process, the first thing I said to them, make sure you never coach again. Because that's the toughest thing I ever did. And I did. I had to jump in the water. And a lot of people are sitting out there, oh, God, woe is me. But you had to be strong for yourself, your family, your players. And I could see people at the club. It was a good sort of soothing 9 weeks because I sort of knew who was with me and who was against me in an inadvertently way, because human nature, you will always blame the coach, and rightly so. The coach gets paid the big bucks. But it was great for me to see that who was sort of right still with me and who wasn't. And I still speak to the people that sort of took 2 steps back, but I really admire the guys that really stuck by me, because they're thinking, gee, you're backing a loser here. Be careful. But
so you're jumping in the bay almost just to sort of clear your head.
Just to clear your head and to feel alive.
Yeah.
The last thing you wanted to do was kicking an empty Coke can along the ground, picking a few leaves off the tree, and the players saw me. I don't think they ever would have seen it, but they would have known it was different, because it was all about them, really. And look, it was tough, because if I had have known that Plough and total, it wasn't his fault, but he was appointed with 4 games to go.
That's the hardest bit, isn't it?
That was
4 games to go. No, that was. You're still coaching.
I won't swear, but that was terrible.
Did you? Was that demeaning for you?
I should have. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't, because I said I was going to coach till the end. But there's no doubt when I saw him.
You can see your anger there.
When I saw him on the footy show with his family, it wasn't his fault.
No.
With 4 games to go, I'm thinking, what the hell? And it came through And it didn't come from Plough either, but it came through a couple of channels. Would it be okay if Plough sat in the back of the box?
You're kidding.
And I said, guys, that's not happening. I said,
who would have come to you and asked you about that?
I won't mention those.
But that's got to be, that's demeaning.
It was a bit silly. It was a bit silly to ask that question. But that didn't happen. But that was tough. Yeah, I think to put myself through that, I'm thinking, gee, I probably was a little bit too stubborn for my own mental health, sort of, if you know what I mean. There's only so much you can take, and that no doubt that 4 weeks took a bit out of me. But it soon turned around pretty quick because I did a couple of games with Triple M in the finals, and the next minute, they were introducing me to someone else. So it was good that I still had an opportunity to be still involved in the game so quickly.
How did Clinton put it when you said, "Hey, come on, guys, we've got 9 games left"? Did he say, "Yeah, it's time to go"? Or?
Clinton was outstanding. He was very supportive, too much so probably, because he said, "Look, if you go well in these next 9 games, maybe you can still get involved in the process." I said, "Clinton, that won't be happening, mate." So, yeah, the coach... And it probably stemmed a little bit from Shorey. I was with Shorey when he went through his downtime. The stubbornness sometimes can get in the way of making a clear sort of, having the clarity of the decision maybe to move on. But probably that's the way I played footy. I didn't have a lot of talent, but I was probably like that Monty Python film, no arms and no legs, but I'd still bite your kneecaps off.
Just on that, were there other board members that you knew were conspiring against you?
Well,
or other people within the club that were conspiring against you?
No, look, I think as a whole they were pretty good. The issue with the Tigers at my time, probably you'd go to a couple of board meetings and something would end up in the press the next day. Yep. That really frustrated me. And that was probably Richmond through the 80s and 90s. And, yeah, I'm not going to cast aspersions. But as a whole, most of them are very supportive. And I find that pretty difficult for board members who, and the ex-Tiger, there was always the loom of the ex-Tiger premiership player in the background. And you guys would inadvertently ring one of them up and get a headline, which is great.
Sheeds is coming back.
That's your job. Yeah,
Sheeds coming.
Sheeds will be out of contract. I'll just, ask the question. And that spectre was always there. But as a whole, Sheed was pretty supportive through that whole process. He could have went to Richmond whenever he liked, really. Let's be brutally honest. But he was quite good through all that.
So you're a winner, and even though you didn't win that many games at St Kilda all the way through, you'd been a champion, and you'd been a coach who'd nearly scaled the highs, and all of a sudden you're sacked or effectively sacked. Yeah. But what does it do for your morale at that stage?
Yeah, it's pretty tough. Remember Noel Judkins? Noel was at Collingwood with me, and for those people that just Google Noel Judkins and Google the 2000 Premiership team, he recruited every one of those guys, which was probably one of the greatest teams of all time. So he was a good mentor for me. He's the godfather of my youngest daughter. To hear him come over and get a bit emotional was tough for me, because I was always trying to keep it at bay. But when a lot of people close knew that I was such a competitor, and when you look in the dictionary, competitors just hate to get beat for whatever reason. St Kilda and Richmond, we lost probably more than we should have. So that was always difficult. And it was always difficult for me because I'd sort of always want to be remembered as the guy that coached Richmond to a prelim, but unfortunately it just got, Frawley's another one on the scrap heap. So those things affect you a bit, but when it affects your family, that's really tough. Yeah, it is.
Did you put that to a side for a period? You had to get on with your life. You had to have other jobs. You have to do the media. Did you put that aside?
I did, because I got offered to go to a few clubs full time.
Did you ever want to coach again, like senior coaching?
Look, I did. No, I did, deep down, and I probably the only regret I got is probably not going Hawthorn full time. I worked with the chief at Triple M, and he made a couple of overtures to go and help Clarko.
And you were there in the premiership year.
Yeah, I was there part-time, because I said to Clarko and Chief, look, I'm happy to help part-time, and because the media was going okay, and I was getting a living out of it, and probably the thing, do I really want to go back into because my wife, she's a very intelligent lady, Anita. She knew that it took a lot out of us as a family, and she didn't want to see that again. But I would have been better next time, but I probably read the tea leaves as well to know that if I went back as an assistant, and I didn't get a job, I really would have beat myself up. So there was always that, I was nearly walking through the door because I helped Neil for a couple of years, helped Clarko, helped Richo, and then the Coach Association probably filled the void a bit because you'd get a lot of positives when you see really intelligent guys. And with Clarko, it was interesting. He'd always go away in the last week of January. I'm thinking, because I was just, head down and bum up at Richmond. And for whatever reason, I said, mate, what are you going away the last week of January for? He says, Bud, they can't get any fitter. All I'm doing is beating up the conditioning coaches and the doctors to get these guys fit. I'm going to go for a week, let the players have a week off before the pointy end starts. It was probably one of the smartest things I've ever seen. And that's probably, why he's been able to be a very, very successful coach. So I was there and saw the whole thing, 6, 7 and 8, and to them win the flag. And as I said, I was only part-time, but I do remember going for a lot of runs with Clark on Wednesday mornings, and I appreciated the fact that he wanted some feedback from me. And it was probably around a few of the things the mistakes I made. So, and he'd always listen. And that was a fond memory to see them win the flag, but I was always in the media box first and foremost. He knew that also. And then the Coach Association, Clarko made another overture, I think, at the end of 2008 when they won the flag, which quite surprised me. I thought, gee, why would you want me now? And asked the question again, and then the Coach Association job sort of come up. And I thought, let's have a crack at that. And it was quite interesting. I was more a branding sort of marketing person for that, but I was pretty keen to get the transition side of it right for them and the education side, because I also knew that I didn't really have a degree, and I was lucky to get into the media. And I thought, gee, what about some of these senior coaches that have just played, been an assistant, and then been a senior coach? Because I always say to an assistant when I was there, just take your time, because the quicker you get in, the quicker you might get out. You got a young family, just make sure you get, support them. And so, yeah, there's a lot of great assistants out there that could be, the next coach of A, B, C or D.
And in your role at the Coaches Association, you would have seen a number of coaches go through extreme hardship in that sense, with family and the like, without naming too many. Tell us a couple of certain situations. I remember
Vossi going up there. That was tough because, and that was probably something that I'm probably grateful that I never, in a sense, not coached St Kilda, but grateful I've never been asked to leave the post of St Kilda coach, because, I can see Swabby, it's a tough one for him. Premiership player, favourite son, coached his team. So it was probably a godsend that didn't happen to me. But I saw Vossi and I thought, gee, this one's going to be tough. He's just an icon of the club. He's
never failed at anything in his life.
Never failed at everything. And and he'd lived. It was amazing. I went to his house. We sat down and had a cup of tea with his wife and family, and he could see the gather from his house. That was a tough one for him. In hindsight, again, you look at all those coaches that, he probably should have went over to West Coast. But again, you're not going to knock back a job that's in your back door, and it's a club you love. So, Matty Primus, I remember Matty and I jumping out the back fence of his house because the media were out the front.
Over the fence?
Scaling the fence.
We scaled the fence, me and Matty, because we did the press conference. We didn't want to do it at Port, and again, he was a favourite son of Port, and that was a tough time for him. So I probably guided those guys. Neil Craig was always a funny one. When he left Adelaide, we had lunch, and I had to go and do some work at Port, and I didn't hire a car because Neil picked us up, and he had some lunch, and Neil was always going to be fine because he was a good intellect and had a lot more sort of strings to his bow other than being a coach. And I think, where's he now? He's over in Rugby Union.
One of those. Yeah,
fantastic.
Yep.
And I said, I've got to do some work at Port, and we had two beers, and he flippantly said, well, I'm not dropping you off there. So anyway, we're going down Port Road, and I had to be there at 2, and it was about 1:30, and he stopped the car on the Port Road, and he said, how'd you get? I said, mate, we've got to go down here. It's another mile. He said, you got a half an hour to go. I told you I'm not going there. So we kept in contact with all those guys and helped them transition into other clubs or into and that's probably, Mark Brayshaw and Greg Hutchison and Ronnie Watt have taken it to a whole new level. But I really was passionate when unfortunately a coach would no longer be told that they're going to be there. So that was always something close to my heart because I knew what I went through. I wanted to make sure they had support because back in the day, it was basically your family and that was about it.
Well,
off you go.
Yeah, off you go.
Yeah,
and
off
like
you
when
go.
you started at St Kilda in your first year, a coach is sacked. Tony Jewell, a premiership coach, is sacked. So you've been conditioned to that from the start. And there would have been no support for someone like Tony Jewell.
And you don't, as a player, you don't really think about it too much. Players inadvertently, it's not their fault, but they've got to get the best out of themselves, but they team together as players. And when a coach leaves, they feel bad, but they quickly get back on the axis because they got to do that. And that's something where a coach finds it hard to relate to, how a players in human nature, they can quickly get on to the next game. Because the facts are, those players have to perform. They don't know who the next coach is. And that's what I said to Richmond. There's probably 15 sets of eyes watching you guys now. And who knows who it is. But they knew it was Plough with 4 to go. But any little mistake could be the difference between them getting a long-term deal or getting another contract. So, and that's why a lot of people say, gee, why do the players react in a different manner when a coach gets sacked? Well, it's human nature. Because what happens is the coach does get the big bucks and he is paid to perform. And there's 18 bullets out there now. Probably 16 because it's 2 caretaker coaches. There's 16 bullets out there now for the 6 coaches in contract. It's going to land at some stage, guys. So be prepared for it. And then they say, well, what do you mean? I said, well, Kevin Sheedy, he copped it in the neck. Mick copped it in the neck. You're talking about 2 of the icons of coaching. So they've got to get conditioned to that a little bit, but they don't see it coming because they think, it's going to happen to me, Spud. That won't happen. And I think when I took over in 2008 and I left there in 2013, I reckon in that 6 years there was 22 changes of coach. So it happens.
Wow.
How tough was that, the Essendon period for you? You've talked about just being ill-equipped with was the biggest crisis in AFL football.
I'd be the first to admit that I'd taken my eyes off the ball. Probably won't delve in this too much because I don't think this is the segment for it, but I was struggling with depression at that stage and I had no idea I was. I was trying to be on the show with Bounce, Triple M. Back in the day, we were very risque. It was sort of the boys' club. It really was. You're either in or out, and we had that demeanour. But then when the Essendon thing got put on the front foot, I'm dealing with litigation. I'm dealing with a lot of coaches being accused of something they didn't do. Some sort of saying, what's going on? Like I can remember, Sean Wellman, gee, what a great man. He got plastered with it. That turned him off football, unfortunately. He's a great fella, Sean. We really couldn't do a lot other than the welfare of all the coaches. And I remember getting criticised, and probably rightly so from a certain degree, from a couple of the stronger coaches at that stage. Horse and Clarko and Ross.
Guys you've had a lot to do with.
Yeah, they're all very supportive,
well.
but they couldn't understand why I was sort of walking around the town with Hurdy. One of our main criteria is to look after the welfare of all of our members. And my thought always in the back of my mind was let the people correct the behaviour, but we, an association, need to look after our members.
How hard was that walking the town with Hurdy when he was going through
that was difficult. There wasn't a lot of. It was basically just to see how he's going welfare wise. And Parker and I spent a fair bit of time with him in his house, and that was difficult. And as I said, I wasn't equipped at all, and it was the AFL-CIO was going through a review at that stage as well. Yeah. So, and I knew that where I had sort of been asleep at the wheel a few things, the marketing, the money, and all this, and the AFL-CIO had to go to a whole new level. And I was in a position mentally to deal with any of that. But again, the stubbornness, I should have probably just walked away. But again, you think, and a lot of the leading scribes are saying, how can Danny act like that? He's conflicted, and I totally was. But I was a competitor, and I was going to move away from the association when everything settled. But it did my head in eventually, and it really did, unfortunately. And that wasn't an excuse. It was just that was something in my psyche that maybe the Richmond days, not playing a flag, all those things built up. And that was just the tipping point. If it wasn't that, it was going to be something else. And
was it the situation where you covered a game at the MCG, you ring your wife Anita, not knowing how to get home, in a sense, in the car park?
And as I said, that's there was a byproduct of me probably just being on this treadmill of life, not smelling the roses, not trying to please everyone, probably other than myself, really. That's what it boiled down to. I had this sort of, I didn't have a chip on my shoulder. I was just, always wanted to be a premiership player, premiership coach, always wanted to be the number one in the media and wanted to do this and wanted to be a great administrator, but you couldn't do everything. Looking back, thank God the review came when it did, because it really did make me reflect, and I thought, I'm really battling here.
Did it save you, do you think, that the review and getting away from that?
And Clarko was great, and a lot of the coaches, they wanted the review because they could see how it was going, and he gave me some really good, honest feedback. And initially, again, I resented that, but, I owe it to him, and we've had a great discussion, and we're really good friends. He's a good country lad, but he wanted, and he was one of the guys with horse that drove the Players Association when they were players.
When they started.
And he could see that my efforts in the media weren't being translated into the Coaches Association, and that was spot on. There was no doubting that, and you could just goes to show you can't be 10 things to 100 people.
So if you've been in your situation, and Hurdy, we know, with his, a mental health issue, what does it say about the pressure of coaching and the scrutiny of it all?
Yeah, I think that we have to take a deep breath. We have to, and the association do a great job because there's some really good psychologists out there. I'm the first to admit when, I'm a bit of a sounding board for a few coaches who go through a scenario where they're not quite, if they're losing sleep, for God's sake, get out there and talk to someone about it. I never talked to anyone. I was stubborn. I didn't sleep for 3 weeks, and the result of that was I ended up with, basically, I did have a nervous breakdown because the lack of sleep basically did my head in. And out of that, I got major depression. But looking back, I probably had bits of depression all the way through. There was always a little bit of a chip on the shoulder. And, it was probably, looking back in the media, and it was no one's fault, but a few media people gave it to me on the way out as a coach. And when I was at Triple M, it was a chance for me to get back at them.
Settling scores.
Yeah, but that was really childish.
Human nature in a sense.
Well, it was human nature, but become untenable with a lot of people. And I've probably destroyed a few friendships over it. I've sort of got over it because I knew that wasn't the person that I wanted to be. I was at that stage. I don't take any of the comments back at that particular time, but. And if I could take them back, I would, but I can't.
You talked about not getting any sleep, and there's not a little bit of sleep, but not a wink of sleep in a night. What does that do to the way you feel?
Well, you look at I was manic to get over it. I just thought it was going to be like a broken arm. It took me sort of 3 or 4 years to come out, and I think you've always got sort of bits and pieces of it now, but I'm well aware of when I do too much. So what the lack of sleep does to you, basically, it nearly turned you insane. Yeah, because through those Richmond years, I never lost a wink of sleep. Yeah. Not a wink.
No, but maybe you're subconsciously putting it to a side and it comes out later on.
Exactly right. And I think you get a bit older. And I think, men out there have to be a hell of a lot more. Because back in the day, and even stoic, farm boy, seven generations from Ireland, if you've got an issue, grab a tissue. If you've got an ailment, work it off. If you have a big one on the squirt, get up an hour early and work it off, and that was the DNA. Manning up in the past was to suffer in silence. Manning up now is to put your hand up. And as I said, I got no issue talking about mental health, what I went through, because I hope I help a lot of people in that.
And how many people have come up to you and said, Danny, what you've said has allowed me to help myself?
Yeah, and I think the advice I give to everyone out there is it's not like a broken arm where you put your hand in plaster. The doctor goes, right, that'll be in plaster for 4 weeks, then you can do some light weights, then you can do some range of movement, and then you'll be able to play again. Mental health, there's all different, and that's where it's pretty difficult. But it's great that people come up, but the main advice I'd say, speak to someone close to you and go and see a doctor. It's as simple as that.
Exactly. And we're seeing more and more footballers today, the stresses of being involved in AFL football with social media and the pressure on them. Have you spoken to some of those guys who've taken time away from the game to deal with their mental health?
Look, I have. I don't openly go and put myself out there. Wayne Swash does an outstanding job. I've had a fair bit to do with Dan Hunt up in New South Wales. He's got the mental health movement, so I'm helping him out a bit with his passion. And, yeah, it's something that I think because we're talking about it off air. We, in the 80s and 90s, I think that was the sweet spot for really good footy and enjoying yourself. It really was. That was the sweetest spot because we were getting well paid relatively to society. We still had a job and we still had a bloody lot of fun for whatever reason. And it's right. There's a lot of money involved in the game now. There wasn't much back in the day. There's a lot of money. Players are getting well paid. There's a lot more scrutiny because of the media rights. There was no Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, probably a good thing in those days. So there's a lot more different pressures on the players. I think they're probably about not about the same. The amount of money we were getting to our output, to the enjoyment we had, compared to the amount of money they're getting, to the scrutiny, the pressures, the mental fatigue, the player having a wine on a Thursday night, getting photoed. Oh, God, what's going on here? The balance, I think, at the moment is an interesting one. And I think that the thing I struggle with is players are getting more time off, and I totally get that because you can't expect them to be there all the time. You don't want to turn it into a clinic where they're just clocking on, clocking off at a footy club, and that's a challenge for any coach or any player or any club out there right now, is to get the total enjoyment out of it. The amount of time they get off, the question I would ask is what are they doing with that time off?
Does that worry
What's your passion? It does worry me. It worries me a lot. I love the fact that Paddy Dangerfield loves his fishing. Who else is out there that's got passions? You know, some guys are just naturals in the media. Not everyone's going to be in the media. Some guys want to be, Stewie Lowe and Max Hutchison, really successful builders. They were going to do that from the get-go. So what's your passion that's actually going to provide some income for you and your family when you retire? And the Players Association do such a good job, and I know they're all aware of it. I've had a bit to do with Tony Brown at St Kilda. We've got a player down there at the moment, Jack Stevens, going through some hardship. A hell of a lot more equipped, but the question I always ask, if they're getting the extra 13, 14, 15, 16 weeks, whatever it is, 3 weeks over Christmas, what are they actually doing? What are they doing with that time? Because my time was simple. I was lucky the last 6 years I worked at the AFL with Gary Lyon and Gavin Brown. Work might be a pretty loose word for what we did.
We had somewhere to go at least.
We had somewhere to go.
At that stage. Atari at that stage.
We used to travel.
School clinics were outstanding from memory.
Unbelievable. We had some fun. But anyway.
You had some good car trips.
We had a lot of good car trips.
Because you also had the car trips with Plugger up and down the highway.
Well, in summer. We didn't have a lot to do in summer. And for the last 2 years I stayed down because normally as soon as the last footy game I'd go back and work on the farm. Then I'd come back and work at the AFL doing clinics. This particular summer we're watching Australia A play England. And I thought Gary fancied himself with his leg spin and Gavin was, you can imagine him just a nugget. He wouldn't sort of show his wicket at all. And we're playing cricket for about 2 weeks, I reckon, before Christmas because we had nothing to do. The school was gone. Anyway, this guy, what are you guys doing? And anyway, the CEO, Ross Oakley, poked his head out. We didn't realise the door we were playing cricket on was the door to his office.
He's just organising the latest merger or whatever right. That was going on.
Expanding the competition. And here's these three imbeciles out there playing cricket on his door. But anyway.
So just jumping back to the coaches again, do you think we're paying coaches enough to deal with all the stresses that actually come with the job?
I think some coaches should... I think there should be a marketing component and a brand component to that. So I think the soft cap or the cap for a footy department should be such and such, but I think there should be a marketing component and an incentivized of how much dollars they'll bring in because sponsors will jump on board.
No doubt.
Membership will increase. So I think they've got every right, and rightly so, that their brand as a coach is just about bulletproof. Because if you win a flag, you are right now. And how many premiership coaches we got? We've got Luke, we've got Horse, Clarko, Simo.
It's not that many.
Not that many.
They're hard to win.
They're very hard to win. Clarko's been greedy and won 4 of them.
He wants more too.
So well, he will. There's no doubting that. Try telling him he won't. So they're bulletproof and they deserve the extra because they add a lot of, and that's why the Paul Roos one, does look a bit. It still could be out there. He's got a great record. He's a premiership coach, and as I said, there's not many out there.
What do you get? What do you get paid for a bonus for a premiership? Those contracts, $250,000.
Yeah, I think and rightly so. You would think about. I think that's fair enough too. I think any president or board would be happy to pay the $250 because boards are in it to win a flag too. Let's face it, they've got a tough job. Boards, they do it for nothing. I'm a big believer in the footy director at a club should be a paid job. Why? Because we've got a lot of board directors, and all rightly so, they've got a different skill set. But a footy director per se, and I'll use Dunstall as an example, he did it for nothing. But he was probably just as important as Clarko through that period. They were in a period of, Swabby's gone, do we get Ayres, do we get Eade, or do we get Terry Wallace? The chief was the guy that said, no, if we get them, they'll want to win. They want to dismantle the list. Our list isn't good enough to play finals. They're going to be frustrated. Let's get a young coach in like Clarko. So I think the footy director has to be the guy that assesses whether a coach deserves a longer contract or he needs to go. Get maybe in a recruiting firm to actually oversee it, but they should have no say. The people that have say are the president, the CEO, the footy manager, and the football director, and it gets ratified for the board. So then they've got to assess whether that guy who comes in, because to get 6 guys to come in and appoint a coach, and then they walk away and wash their hands of it, is just ludicrous.
Well, you walked away famously from the Essendon Mark Thompson scenario. Tell us about that. It was a boat race?
It was done. It was a done deal.
How frustrating was that? You've asked to go on a panel.
Well, it wasn't frustrating. It was silly. Why go through a process?
So there were people like Mark Harvey and Neil Danaher maybe that thought they could have got the job?
They probably should have got the job. I think Dean Laley got interviewed for it. Not saying Mark shouldn't have, but it just become a job of, or who's going to appease the Essendon people as much? Can we get someone that's probably didn't have the success of Mark Harvey at Fremantle? You know, that was a bit silly, that whole process. It was a bit naive from them too.
It's been an amazing life in football. There's probably a podcast in your trips with Tony Lockett down to Moorabbin. Danny Frawley.
That one.
You've got to leave us with one story on Plugger on the road home. You've got to give us one story, I reckon. Don't you think, Ralphie?
Bloody oath.
I'm not sure whether this one.
If you're not sure, we like it.
Greg Burns had a milk bar in Snake Valley. Greg Burns won a World of Sport Award, by the way, in 1981. And won 2 BNFs, a super player, tough as you'll come. Didn't whinge, gave a lot, but got a lot back.
Don't complain, don't explain.
He bought this milk bar, and he had a couple of tickets, and we've all been down that road. A couple of tickets can buy a few things. So he bought him 48 dozen eggs at a chicken farm at Pakenham. So we had to come down bloody early. We had to leave at 2, so we left at 1. Went out to wasn't Pakenham. Anyway, I was out there somewhere. 48 dozen eggs. Well, I can guarantee you by the time I got to Ballarat, there wasn't one egg left. There was a few people, and I apologise for a few people rollerblading down Kerford Road. The big fella had a good arm on him. But anyway,
so he was a good kick for goal, but he was good with an egg in his arm too.
Very good with an egg. Burnsy wasn't too happy, but yeah, we had a bit of fun on those trips.
So we've seen the serious side of you, Danny. To finish with a jokester, though, do you remember a moment in the coaching box which just had you in stitches?
I can remember one particular day, my second game, it might have been. We won our first game. We're playing North Melbourne on Friday night, and I built up all week that North were too old. They've had their day, they won 96, 7 prelims in a row, 99. This is 2000. We won our first game, and we were about 2 points up with 3 at the third quarter. I don't know whether you remember the footage, but I had the white shirt on, the tie, the shirt was hanging out, the sleeves rolled up, and I ran past the North huddle very closely and said, "You guys are too old and too slow." And of course, Archer and Kerry and these guys have looked at each other and said, "Is that bloke for real?" And of course, they've told Dennis, and Dennis has given one of the great stories. We kick 1-7, they kick 7-1. So, and I remember Dennis giving me a nice old clip after the game. That young Frawley, he might be a good coach, but he's just got to settle down a little bit. So
Because obviously it's an emotional time in the coach's box. You're an emotional player. You loved that sort of side of things. That's why you were good. Clarko actually hurt himself in one of the early games. He kicked a water bottle that was actually full and didn't realise nearly broke his toe. Did you ever do any damage to yourself?
No, I did, because back in those days, I was development coach. So he did all the skills with the players. Rupert Theris was on our rookie list, and he had 42 touches, and we got beat by 4 points at Punt Road. And I asked Rupert how he thought he went, and I knew what the answer was going to be. He said, "Yeah, it went pretty well. I had 42 touches." And then I said, "Well, hang on, Jason Johnson just come back from injury from Essendon, and he's had 52. I don't reckon you've done that well at all." And I think defence is a thing around the ground, hold the spectators out. And Rupert's head was there, and I've made out I was going to hit him, which I was never going to. But I put my fist just past his face, and I said, "You've got to learn to defend." And I put my fist, hoping it was going to go through the plaster wall, but there was a boom behind it. I broke my middle knuckle. But Rupert, to his credit, then got put on the list and then played in a couple of grand finals.
And turned out to be a very good player.
And we walked them down before they ripped the old Punt Road. It was under the Punt Road Social Club before they pulled it down. Me and Rupert went and got a photo, and the sort of fist outline's still there a little bit. And I think the couple of the players for Collingwood, Tarkin Lockyer was one, put a circle around it. Rupert, you must defend. And it was still there. So
that's gold. I
did probably wear my heart on my sleeve a little bit too much.
So did you shake it off at that stage, or was Rupert aware of the fact you might have done some damage?
No, the boys knew by Tuesday when they saw me handing plaster what had happened.
Thanks for joining us on Sacked, presented by Herald Sun Sport. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, leave a review, and catch every episode on iTunes or heraldsun.com.au. Up next, Collingwood legend Tony Shaw.
After 4 years, I copped it in the neck, and I knew that was coming 10 weeks prior.